knowledge, in however defined, increases in direct proportion with the augmentation or the increase in means of knowing and in means of communication. So means of knowing and means of communication. وسائل المعرفة and توصيل المعرفة, the what we call the field of communications in today's world. And the means of communication, again, to state the obvious, there's a huge difference between a world that will invent wheel and rely on a wheeled society, and a society that has not invented a wheel, right? Or a society that relies on livestock to transport knowledge or information, and a society that relies on the burning of fossil fuel or whatever form of fuel. And the minority view is that there is no question that shared consciousness increases as we increase in means of transportation, but not necessarily shared knowledge. And that's a minority view, and that happens to be the view that I adopt. But what the critical question here, and the critical issue, is that human history goes through periods and can be divided into critical periods by the ability of human beings to share a state of consciousness. In other words, to be aware, for instance, of the existence or impacted by the lack of food in one area of the world. The more you become interdependent and interlinked, the more you are affected by the same thing. And to skip a great deal of writing and scholarship and all of that, I think we can, and if someone doesn't agree, let me know now, so then I'll take the trouble to actually bore you with all the arguments. So let me know if you want the boring version. The less boring version is that we are increasingly in a world in which we can be all impacted by the same set of events, or in which a state of consciousness or a state of knowledge of the other can be shared by others in an ever shrinking space and time dimension, right? And now we're coming to the mind-blowing historical period, one in which I am happy not to be alive in, because I'm an old-fashioned person, a world in which consciousness can be formed and shared in virtual reality. So it doesn't even have to be in an actual material world. And that is for the world of fiqh is going to be, the fuqaha now think they have issues. Wait until they get the virtual world on their hand, then they're going to have issues. But so we move to this remarkable state in which humanity is as if they're having a conversation increasingly in a single room, but we wake up and smell the roses or smell the garbage dump or garbage can or whichever you want to call it, and we see, I don't know if any of you have seen this new legal memorandum that was sent around by Daesh, by ISIS, about slavery, the legality of taking captives. Reading through it, it's basically, they of course make it sound like they're actually conveying deep learning, but what they're really doing there is that they're copying some pages from anyone who's read about the laws of dealing with captives and slaves and so on in pre-modern texts and pre-modern manuals. So you have here a very serious issue in which, and perhaps ISIS is an extreme example of that, in which our speech as Muslims with each other, or in our writings, or even in our the way we talk about text, and the way we talk about consciousness, and the way that we talk about information, completely ignores this historical progression. We still speak about the books of tradition or about the meaning of text as if that historical progression in shared consciousness and this historical progression in the evolution of means of sharing knowledge has not occurred. And one of the things that I hope to do in these sessions is to share with you at least my thoughts, and then inshallah I hope the last session that it will be more of the last session when this I'm pulling the surprise to it, because my wife would have strictly forbidden me from doing that if I would have told her. But the last session is not going to be a halaqa at all. It's actually going to be a discussion in which I will wear myself out and probably need to be hospitalized afterwards. But nevertheless, I'm very interested in engaging in a conversation in the last session with you guys, or with those who last. I hope to chase most of you away by then. That's sort of the way we do things. You try to get rid of people until you get to your actual point of the very end, and then you make your actual point. And but again, that's because we share knowledge. I'm still a part of this world in which the impact of this historical evolution, but yet we still speak about our fiqh and our usul al-fiqh, and about our tafsir, and about our hadith, and about narratives of the Prophet, and about the issues of the Sahaba, and the issues of Ahlul Bayt, and the issues of theology, precisely in the same ways. For instance, till this very day, I mean, till just last week, Azhar, in now that they feel more secure because they have been preserved constitutionally the role of being the only official representatives of Islam in Egypt, right? So now they're done with the political battle. So Azhar comes out and starts going after those people who have called to question the reliability of Bukhari and books of Hadith, and because those of you don't have the background, when the Ikhwan were in power or when the revolution was going on, they were sort of sitting it back and worrying primarily about, is someone going to start competing with us over who speaks about Islam and who speaks about fiqh, and are we going to get these miserable academics from the West coming in and start pontificating about what Sharia is, or are we going to start getting these Marxists or these, or whoever the group is coming in there? But now that they've been secure their position as the only official representatives of Islamicity constitutionally by the army. Now they are, and some of the discourses are fascinating, and what is most fascinating is that most of this, what Muslims are saying, at least in the this very poor means of rendering testimony, this very false means, and this is, I was hoping to get that the final day, but I'll give you, I'll betray one of my sinister purposes today, is that in terms of conveying your shahada, this is a remarkably deceptive instrument, right? Because you convey your shahada in form of completely anonymously, hidden from, and you use this little thing to write all types of things, which is one form of discharging your obligation, and then only God knows when you stand before Allah on the final day, and you've cussed out this person, and you've testified about this, and you've testified that about, whether you're pro-Sisi or against Sisi, pro-Khomeini or against Khomeini. Of course, I'm behind the times when it comes to Iran. I'm still Khomeini, I'm stuck at the Khomeini time, in other words. At least I know who rules Egypt these days is Sisi. I think Obama's still in power. Anyway, this means of rendering testimony, part of the virtual reality that we're talking about, it's going to be you're already tasting part of the way that it will affect the individual taklif that all of us will have, and the way in which we interact with this obligation, and and our obligation, especially towards the way that ma'rifah, knowledge, interacts with consciousness and interacts with reason, and then the way you bring this consciousness and reason to bear in either in conflict with, or in congruence with, or in some type of relationship with the text. Whether this text is revelation in the form of the Quran, or any lesser form of text. But and all of that becomes part of the world that we ultimately become responsible for, that either results in safk al-dima, greater amount of ugliness, or a greater rububiyyah, or haqn al-dima, the prevention of bleeding or shedding of blood, which is, as we'll talk about, is what is closer to divinity. That at least I will make the argument that by its nature, by the principles of creation itself, the spilling of blood is a digression away from divinity, away from rububiyyah, away from kunu unasa rabbaniyun, rabbaniyya itself, and the haqn al-dima, the prevention of blood, and including soul murder and the various, is by its nature closer to the al-rabbaniyya or rububiyyah, the divinity, and hence beauty, and the various implications of this. Okay, what time is it now?
9 o'clock. 9:02.
I have been I've been asking Allah for madad the whole day. Madad is support, special support, and alhamdulillah, I've received it, so that's why I'm talking to you without pain. It- so I don't feel like quitting right this minute, but I want to let's take a 5 minute break and then continue on for about uh, uh, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then I promise I'll be a good boy and stop. I'm actually, I couldn't wish for a better caretaker, and I probably would have been long dead by now if it hasn't been for my family that makes sure I don't end up uh, uh, forgetting the balance and the reasonableness of the balance and what it mandates. Okay, let's take a 5 minute break, and I apologize for the rudeness because I know it is. I wish, I mean, you do not know how much I wish that I could be a host, especially with my Princeton visitors, because uh, uh, you guys have actually gotten on a plane to come here, and I think you're insane, frankly, but beautiful at the same time. So, insane and beautiful, that's the way I always like it. When I was younger, at least, and had more else. But now that I'm older and my body has been used up, I can just admire it from afar and just sit and wonder. I was, but even beyond the Princeton people or with all of you, I wish I could be a good host and welcome you and sit with you and speak and chat but unfortunately, I am under rather severe medical restrictions and I have violated these medical restrictions on more than one or two occasions, and every time I've paid the cost. And the last time it cost me about a week in the hospital, so it's not very fun. And inshallah we can avoid that.
Inshallah.
So my apologies again, and please forgive me for not being able to be a good host and welcome you properly. But
May Allah give you shifa.
barakallah. So I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Okay.